My mum is 78 years old, and just over a year ago, something started happening that I never imagined. At first, they were small details, things that seemed normal. She confused the names of her friends, called her neighbor by the name of a childhood classmate, or referred to one grandson using another's name. We took it as a joke. Just things that come with age, we all said with nervous laughter. But little by little, those confusions became more frequent and more worrying. One morning, while we were having breakfast, she looked at me fixedly. She smiled at me, and for a few seconds, I saw something in her eyes that froze my blood. She didn't remember my name. It was only a few seconds. Then she said my name as if nothing had happened. But I had already noticed. Something was wrong. From that day on, I started paying closer attention. It wasn't just with me. At family gatherings, she stayed silent, trying to avoid saying names for fear of making a mistake. When she called on the phone, she hesitated before saying who she wanted to speak to. And what hurt me the most was seeing her frustration, her shame, her way of hiding what she already knew was happening to her. That's when our search began. We consulted doctors, read articles, looked for advice everywhere. We heard everything, from miracle vitamins to complicated exercises that seemed more for college students than for a woman almost 80 years old. Until one day, almost by chance, we discovered a small trick, a simple exercise that only takes 1 minute a day. At first, it sounded too good to be true, but we decided to try it. And what happened next surprised us all. Today, I want to tell you exactly what we did, how we discovered it, and why I believe this small daily habit can make a big difference in the memory of an elderly person. If you have a father, a mother, a grandparent, or even yourself have noticed lately that you forget more names than usual, stay with me, because what I'm going to share could help you more than you imagine. But before starting, I'd love to know, how old are you, and from which country or city are you watching me? Write it down for me here in the comments below. I'd love to read it. The stage of the first signs. It all started so subtly that, at the time, no one paid much attention. I remember perfectly the first day I noticed something strange. My mom was at the front door, talking to her lifelong neighbor, a woman she had shared chats, recipes, and entire afternoons with for years. But that day, when she tried to call her by name, she drew a blank. She hesitated, smiled to cover it up, and ended up saying, "Oh dear, my mind's somewhere else. What was your name again?" Everyone laughed. Even she did. We took it as a funny anecdote, one of those things that can happen to anyone. A few days later, we were at a family gathering. Her little granddaughter, Laura, ran up to greet her as she always did. My mum hugged her, but when she looked into her eyes, she called her by the name of another granddaughter who lives in another city and hadn't been seen for months. At that moment, we all glanced at each other, but no one wanted to say anything. It was just another confusion, something unimportant, or at least that's what we wanted to believe. Then came other little things, very small. She forgot where she left her keys, although she always put them in the same place. She went to the kitchen to get something, and when she got there, she didn't remember what she wanted. She started making lists for everything. Even to remember, she had to water the plants. At night, sometimes she would be silent, staring into space. When we asked if something was wrong, she just said she was tired or distracted. And we, so as not to worry her, kept saying the same phrase as always. "It's normal, Mom. Just things that come with age." But deep down, I was already starting to worry. There was something in her eyes, as if she was fighting internally to keep control, as if she knew something in her mind was starting to change, but she didn't want to scare us, or admit it to herself. I remember one afternoon, while we were having coffee, she whispered, "Sometimes I get scared. I feel there are names, memories, slipping away, like they're there, but I can't reach them." That phrase stayed with me. because I understood it wasn't just simple forgetfulness for her. It wasn't a joke of old age. It was a real fear, a fear she tried to hide, but that was slowly growing, both in her mind and mine. From that day, without saying it out loud, I started watching her more closely, noticing every little forgetfulness, every hesitation when she spoke, every longer pause than usual. And that's how we went from laughter to silent worry. The denial phase and typical excuses. Weeks passed, and with every little forgetfulness, my worry grew a bit more. But if there was someone who didn't want to accept what was happening, it was her. Every time she made a mistake with a name or blanked out in the middle of a sentence, she had a ready answer, an excuse, something to convince herself and us that everything was fine. "I'm tired," she said while massaging her temples, as if exhaustion was the cause of everything. "I have too many things on my mind," she repeated, while apologizing for mixing up her brother's name with that of a childhood neighbor. "That happens to everyone," she assured with a nervous laugh when she forgot where she left her glasses, even if they were right on the table where she always put them. And we also fell into that self-deception game. "It's true. We all forget things sometimes, right?" I said, trying to downplay it. "Sure, it's stress. Even I forget my keys sometimes," my brother commented, as if comparing our forgetfulness with his was enough to calm the fear that was slowly settling in us. Each forgetfulness came with an awkward silence, a look seeking approval. She needed to believe she was okay. We needed to believe it too. But deep down, something started to hurt me. The way she avoided long conversations, how she glanced sideways at people when she spoke, trying to anticipate, looking for clues not to make another mistake. She even started writing more things on little notes she stuck to the fridge, doors, drawers, simple things like, "Call Carmen," or "Don't forget the milk." Sometimes when tidying the house, I found those outdated notes, reminders of calls she never made, or shopping lists she never took to the store. One night while having dinner, something happened that marked me especially. We were talking about family, old times, and when I asked her about a story she always told fondly, her face changed. She went silent, looked at me, and after a few seconds just said, "I don't remember now. I must be very tired." But this time, her voice sounded different. It was no longer a cheerful excuse. It was a desperate attempt to convince herself that, really, it was just tiredness. That was the moment something inside me began to change. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I couldn't laugh it off to ease the tension. And above all, I couldn't avoid asking myself the question I had tried to dodge for weeks. What if it's something more serious? That thought started to haunt me during the day, and also at night. Because when the person you love most starts forgetting, they don't just forget names. A part of your life begins to fade away, and the fear of losing them, of losing their essence, starts to feel too real. When the problem can no longer be ignored. Until that moment, we had all made a conscious effort to minimize the situation. But there was one day, one in particular, that forced us to face the truth. It was during her best friend Carmen's birthday, a friendship of over 40 years, a relationship full of memories, confidences, endless coffee afternoons. I called her in the morning to remind her, "Mom, today is Carmen's birthday. Do you want us to call her together?" She went silent, and after a few seconds, with a forced smile, asked, "Who is Carmen?" That question hit me like a direct blow to the chest. The woman who had been like a sister to her, the person she shared so many moments with, was now just an empty name. I tried to cover it up, joke, but she looked at me with eyes full of confusion. And in that look, I understood it went beyond simple temporary forgetfulness. From then on, the episodes became more obvious. She stopped remembering important appointments, the medical checkup she had been waiting for weeks. She completely forgot. The dentist appointment, too. Everyday objects started mysteriously disappearing around the house. Keys, the phone, even her wallet. Sometimes I found them in strange places, inside the fridge, in the laundry basket, or behind the couch cushions. Every time we discovered one of these lost treasures, she tried to laugh it off, pretend it was a funny anecdote. But in her eyes, there was already something different, a mix of frustration and shame. Little by little, her personality began to change. She, who had always been outgoing, talkative, the one who told jokes at family gatherings, now became quieter, more reserved. She no longer participated as much in conversations. She stayed in the background, and when she spoke, she did so carefully, as if every word was dangerous territory, as if she feared making a mistake in front of everyone. Sometimes, when we asked her something directly, instead of answering, she just smiled and said, "I don't remember anymore. What a head of mine." But that smile was no longer the same. As her daughter, it broke my heart to see her like that, to see how she started losing confidence, how she doubted herself, how she avoided gatherings or outings to not be embarrassed. And that's when we understood we could no longer look the other way. Worry turned into action. Together with my brother, we decided it was time to seek help. We made an appointment with her primary care doctor, and from there, more consultations followed. Neurologist, psychologist, memory tests, blood work, even an MRI. We wanted to know what was happening, to put a name to what was going on, to have answers, and if possible, find a solution. Because seeing her like that, fading little by little, was not an option. The house filled with brochures, supplements recommended at the pharmacy, well-meaning advice from friends and neighbors who also knew similar cases. We tried mental exercises, memory games, changes in diet, everything we could. But for weeks, nothing seemed to work. And just when we were starting to lose hope, that's when we discovered that little 1 minute a day trick. But before I tell you exactly what it was, I want to take you through the journey we took before reaching that solution. Because sometimes, before finding the answer, you have to understand the problem well. The search for answers. After that initial medical appointment, a stage began that none of us will forget. The desperate search for answers. The first stop was the consultation with her primary care doctor. They asked basic questions, orientation tests, short-term memory tests, simple concentration exercises. What day is it today? What month is this? Can you remember these 3 words in a few minutes? My mother, nervous, tried to answer with a smile, but the blanks were obvious. The doctor was honest but cautious. It could be something age-related, or it could be the beginning of mild cognitive impairment. To know for sure, we need to do more tests. That word, cognitive impairment, echoed in my head for days. They referred us to a neurologist. There they did more complex exams, verbal memory tests, attention tests, language tests, even an MRI to rule out structural damage. The wait for results was endless. Every day, every little forgetfulness from my mother seemed to confirm our worst fears. Meanwhile, we did what any family would do in that situation. We looked for information on our own. I started reading everything I could find online about memory loss in elderly people. I spent hours browsing forums, medical blogs, health magazine articles. I searched for testimonies of others going through the same thing. Some talked about mild cognitive impairment, others about early dementia, even Alzheimer's cases. Each new article left me with more doubts than certainties. Some said diet was key, that you had to increase antioxidants, oily fish, nuts. Others insisted on the importance of deep sleep and sleep hygiene. I also found endless lists of cognitive stimulation exercises, crosswords, Sudoku, memory games, reading aloud, learning new things every day. We tried everything. We prepared a daily plan. In the mornings, mental exercises. In the afternoons, outdoor walks. In the evenings, dinners rich in omega-3 and magnesium. I even bought her a pastime book for seniors. But the truth, progress was minimal. She still had forgetfulness. She still looked at family photos with that expression of effort, as if she had to dig in her mind to recall names that used to come automatically. And the worst was seeing her frustration. She no longer joked about her forgetfulness. Now it was clear that every failure affected her deeply. She started asking us more often, "Am I going crazy?" We tried to calm her. "No, Mom. Relax, you're just distracted. This happens to many people." But deep down, anxiety grew. Some nights after she went to bed, I would stay sitting in the kitchen with the laptop open, desperately searching for new solutions, new studies, some scientific article, some story of someone who went through the same thing and found a way out. My brother also started researching. He brought natural supplements, ginkgo biloba, vitamin B12, folic acid. We tried relaxing teas to improve sleep, breathing exercises to reduce stress, but weeks passed, and improvement did not come. Each day felt like a race against time. And deep down, what we feared most was that we were witnessing the beginning of something irreversible. That was the hardest stage, that feeling of doing everything, but seeing no results. Until one day, almost by chance, while reading a small article in a forgotten corner of the internet, I came across a simple practice, an exercise of just 1 minute a day. At first it sounded too simple, even naive, but I decided to try, because I had nothing to lose, and what was at stake was too important. The unexpected discovery, how we found the 1 minute daily trick. After weeks of doctors, tests, and more tests, we were at a dead end. Every day was the same. My mother kept forgetting names, appointments, even small conversations we had had just hours before. The neurologist was clear. We can't confirm a dementia diagnosis yet, but there are signs of mild cognitive impairment. That word, mild, sounded like consolation. But deep down, we knew things could get worse. At night, after putting her to bed, I stayed awake, with my laptop on, searching, reading, watching specialist videos. I entered forums where sons and daughters like me shared their stories and their despair. It was during one of those early mornings when I came across a small article. It wasn't from a major media outlet, nor a famous neurologist. It was just a post from an occupational therapist who worked with elderly adults. The title caught my attention immediately. 1 minute a day. How to stimulate memory in elderly people without overwhelming them. I started reading, with that mix of hope and skepticism that already accompanied me with every new recommendation. The therapist explained that, in many cases, excessive memory exercises, complicated games, or forced routines could generate more anxiety than benefits in elderly people with cognitive problems. That sometimes, what the brain needed was a small dose of positive stimulation, short, simple, but constant, a daily exercise of just 1 minute. But that directly activated the areas related to memory and recall. The trick was very simple, almost ridiculously simple. It was something she called directed positive recall. What did it consist of? Basically, taking 1 minute each day to ask the person a single specific question. But not just any question, it had to connect with a specific, positive, emotional memory. For example, "Mom, what was the house you grew up in like?" Or, "Can you tell me again how you met Dad?" "Do you remember that recipe you loved to cook on Sundays?" The key was that she didn't feel tested, that she didn't think she was taking a memory test. The therapist insisted on one thing. The goal is not for her to remember every detail precisely, but to activate the areas of her brain related to emotional and autobiographical memory. At first, it seemed like too simple a technique for such a big problem. But then I thought, what could I lose? So the next morning, while having breakfast, I tried it. I approached her, smiled, and without giving it too much importance, I asked, "Mom, do you remember the first time you went to the beach?" She stayed silent for a few seconds, and then, as if she had found a small light in the middle of the darkness, she began to speak. "I don't remember exactly what year it was, but I do remember the feeling of the hot sand on my feet and the polka dot dress I wore." As she spoke, her expression changed. For the first time in weeks, I saw her smile, truly. Her eyes sparkled, and for a moment, she was herself again. That day, I decided to repeat the exercise. Every morning, for just 1 minute, I asked her a new question. Always simple, always focused on beautiful memories, stories from her childhood, youth anecdotes, happy moments, and little by little, I started to notice something incredible. It wasn't that her memory had miraculously returned, but she started to be more awake, more connected, more willing to talk, to remember, to laugh. Even on bad days, that little minute became a special moment between the two of us. What seemed like a silly trick started to give her back confidence. And best of all, she started looking forward to it. Every morning, when she saw me approach with a smile, she said, "Well, what are you going to ask me today?" That was the beginning of a little miracle in our home. And here, I want to tell you exactly why this method works, and how you too can apply it with the person you love. But first, let me tell you about the first results we started to see, and how the process of turning that minute into a true tool for emotional and cognitive recovery went. The beginning of the practice, from day 1 to day 7. The first day I tried the trick. I won't lie, it was a bit awkward. I approached her while we were having breakfast. I said with a smile, "Mom, today we're going to do something fun, a little memory game, just for 1 minute." She looked at me with that mix of distrust and humor I knew well. "What kind of new thing is this?" she said, laughing. "At my age, I'm not up for exams anymore." I explained it wasn't an exam. No one was going to judge her. It was just a way to keep the mind active. If she wanted, we could even take it as a game between the two of us. Still, she looked at me incredulously, but she agreed. I suppose more out of affection, or not to contradict me, than true conviction. That first day, I decided to make it easy. Very easy. I put in front of her 5 family photographs, people very close to her, my brother, my father, my children, and me. I asked her simply to say the names out loud, one by one, with each photo. I tried to accompany it with a small phrase that gave context. "This is your oldest grandson, the one who always calls you on Sundays. And this is me, the annoying one who makes you have oatmeal every morning." She laughed. She got one wrong, hesitated on another. But in the end, she managed to say all 5 names. That was the first step. The next day, we repeated the exercise, this time with other photos, or asking small details. "Mom, what's the name of your lifelong neighbor?" Or, "What was your favorite teacher's name in school?" Every day, just 1 minute. Always at the same time, after breakfast when she was more alert. Always in the same place, the kitchen table, where we had always shared our conversations. The first 3 days were a bit hesitant. There were answers with doubts, and an occasional resigned look. But something started to change around the 4th or 5th day. I noticed that, little by little, it took her less time to respond. She no longer said, "I don't remember," as quickly as before. There was even a special moment I'll never forget. It was the 6th day. I showed her an old photo from a family trip we took when I was just 10 years old. Before I said anything, she suddenly said, "That was the summer we went to Benidorm Beach. How I burned my back that day." I was stunned. It was a memory we hadn't mentioned in years. But there it was, intact, coming out of her memory. as if it had been waiting for a chance to come back. The seventh day was even more hopeful. We were sitting in the living room, and suddenly, without me asking anything, she said, "By the way, aren't you going to ask me today's question?" I smiled, because that was a sign that the little 1-minute habit was already creating a space in her mind, a space reserved for remembering. That's when I realized that trick, that simple exercise, was starting to open small doors. Doors I thought were slowly closing. And if in just 7 days we had seen these small changes, I decided we were not going to stop. Now the next step was turning that daily minute into a genuine routine of emotional and cognitive recovery. But before telling you how we progressed in the following weeks, I want to explain what we were really doing in her brain and why this simple method started to show results. Because understanding why helped us stay consistent, even on days when it seemed like there were no advances. Progress after the first weeks. The first 7 days passed, and we decided to continue. Every morning after breakfast, that memory minute became a tradition, a little ritual between mother and daughter, almost like when I was a child and she taught me songs or helped me with homework. But the really surprising thing was what started to happen after the second week. First came the little details. In the middle of a conversation with my brother, she said his name, without stopping, without hesitation, as if she had never had trouble remembering it. One afternoon, while we talked on the phone with one of her neighbors, I heard her greet her by name, with a confidence I hadn't seen in months. That uncomfortable pause was gone. That long silence before mentioning someone's name. She no longer said, "Oh, what was this girl's name?" or "It's on the tip of my tongue." Now, words flowed more naturally. Even at family gatherings, when someone arrived home, she no longer resorted to the typical, "Hi, you dear." Now she called them by their name, directly, with a smile. I remember a very special moment. It was a Sunday when her friend Carmen came to visit her. After weeks without seeing each other, my mother opened the door, and without thinking, said warmly, "Carmen, what a joy to see you. Come in, come in." I almost shed a tear. Carmen hugged her tight, and I could only silently thank for that small, great achievement. And it wasn't just that. Her way of expressing herself also began to improve. I noticed that when she spoke, she no longer hesitated so much. She not only remembered names, she also seemed more confident telling anecdotes or giving her opinion. I saw her more involved in conversations, more present. The smile returned to her face. That expression of frustration or fear of making mistakes that accompanied her so much during the first months was gone. Little by little, she began to enjoy calling her friends on the phone again, asking about the grandchildren by their names, telling family stories without getting stuck halfway looking for words. And here is something important I want to share with you. None of this was magic, nor was it a change overnight. It was the result of consistency, of that small daily effort, of not missing, not even one day, even if it was just for 1 minute. There were days she didn't feel like it. Days she said, "Not today, dear. I'm tired." But I always encouraged her. I told her, "Just 1 minute, Mom, nothing more. And if after you want to rest, I promise I won't bother you anymore." And always, after doing it, she ended up smiling. I think deep down, she also noticed something was changing, that her mind, little by little, was strengthening, that those little pieces of her memory that seemed lost were coming back. And that feeling gave her back something she had started to lose long ago: confidence in herself. That's why, if you're going through a similar situation, if you have someone close who is starting to forget names, I want to tell you something I learned from this experience. The key is not in big solutions, nor in complicated treatments, but in consistency, in those little daily gestures. That over time, can make a huge difference. Because sometimes, all it takes is 1 minute a day, but repeating it every day. Other changes that helped boost the effect. Although the little 1-minute daily exercise was the trigger for everything, we soon understood that if we wanted to consolidate those advances, we needed to take care of other aspects of her life. It was like that trick was the spark, but for the flame to keep burning, more wood was needed. So as a family, we decided to make some adjustments, simple but very powerful changes. First, we focused on nutrition. We started researching foods that could help memory and brain health. We read articles, watched interviews with neurologists, and little by little, we incorporated small changes in her diet. We included more blueberries, a small fruit, but loaded with antioxidants. We made smoothies with yogurt, a handful of blueberries, and a little honey. She called them her blue vitamins. We also added more walnuts to her snacks. They say they're good for memory, and interestingly, if you look closely, they are shaped like a brain. We started using more turmeric in meals, a little in soups, in rice, or in infusions with milk and cinnamon. And of course, we made sure leafy green vegetables didn't miss: spinach, chard, broccoli. At first, she protested a little. "Are you going to turn me into a rabbit now?" she said, laughing. But later, when she started feeling more energetic, there was no need to insist so much. The next step was improving her rest. Before, she stayed watching TV late, and sometimes fell asleep on the couch with the lights on. So we created a nighttime routine. 1 hour before bed, we turned off the TV. I prepared her a hot infusion, caffeine-free, and we put soft music in the background. I taught her some small breathing exercises so she could relax before going to bed. Nothing complicated. Just breathe deeply, fill the lungs with air, and exhale slowly, several times. The difference was noticed quickly. She started sleeping longer stretches, waking up less during the night, and getting up with better mood in the mornings. The third change was physical exercise. We're not talking about intense workouts, just short walks outdoors, walking through the park, feeling the sun on the skin, moving the legs, breathing fresh air. Some mornings, I accompanied her. Other times, she went with her neighbor. I also taught her some gentle stretches to activate the body upon waking. Movement, even moderate, gave her more energy and improved her mood. Additionally, we incorporated activities to stimulate the mind. We bought crossword books and word games. She, who had always enjoyed reading, started taking up that habit again. We read aloud together. Sometimes we chose short stories, other times, poetry. This simple act, reading aloud, helped her maintain concentration and exercise her auditory and verbal memory. Finally, we also worked on reducing her stress. It's not easy, I know, because when you start forgetting things, anxiety appears almost unintentionally. But little by little, with patience, I helped her create moments of calm in her day. Every morning, before starting anything else, we did 2 or 3 minutes of deep breathing together. Just that, sitting silently, with eyes closed, breathing, feeling the air go in and out. And at the end of each day, I asked her to tell me 3 good things that had happened to her, no matter how small. At first, it was hard for her to find them, but over time, she began saying things like, "Today I remembered the neighbor's name," or "I remembered where I left the keys," or simply, "I felt happy this morning." These small changes, combined with the daily name exercise, created a support network for her brain. A combination of nutrition, rest, movement, mental stimulation, and emotional calm. And so, day after day, I saw her stronger, more present, more herself. Because memory is not only trained with the mind, also with the body and with the heart. And although every person is different, in our case, all these changes together made the difference. Today, after everything we have lived with my mom, there is something I'm very clear about. The difference between normal aging and a deterioration you can stop lies in the attention you give it in time. Yes, it's true. With age, it's normal to forget some things, to sometimes have to think a little more before remembering a name, or lose the thread of a conversation now and then. That is part of life, part of getting older. But when forgetfulness becomes more frequent, more obvious, when it affects the way a person lives their day to day, when it begins to slowly erase their confidence and joy, then it's not time to resign oneself. It's time to act. I want to be totally honest with you. I'm not going to tell you this 1 minute a day trick is a magic cure. Every case is different. Every brain is unique. And what works for one person may not have the same effect on another. But there is something I can guarantee, because I have seen it in my own home, in my mother's eyes, and in her recovered smile. It's worth trying. It's worth dedicating that little minute a day. It's worth accompanying, encouraging, celebrating every small progress. It's worth fighting for every memory. So if you have someone you love nearby, someone who is starting to forget names, or who tells you every day, "My mind's slipping, what a forgetful me," don't wait for it to get worse. Start today. Just 1 minute. 1 minute to reinforce that connection between their mind, their memories, and the people they love. Because sometimes that little daily effort can make a big difference. It can bring back their confidence, the smile, the self-confidence, and above all, it can prevent that person from being lost in oblivion too soon. Before I say goodbye, I want you to remember this phrase. The saddest thing is not forgetting a name. The saddest thing is forgetting how many people love you. Thank you for being here, listening to this story so personal to me. If you know someone this message could help, share it. And if you'd like to know exactly how to do this little 1 minute exercise and what other tricks we discovered along the way, let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to make a specific video just about that. See you in the next video. And remember, every day is a new opportunity to strengthen the mind and the heart.